Shalom, shalom, friends. Welcome to this episode here of the Watchdog, exclusively on the TheCynicogue, and I am your host, CJ Cox. Really happy to have you all here. God bless you, of course. If anybody is here so far, just while we buy some time for people to actually come in to watch the program, please do please do share, please do get this out to all of the different social media accounts you may have. What good is a message without an audience to hear it? Make sure we get that like, make sure we get that subscribe, bell rung, all the good stuff going on. And, of course, I'm just stalling for time here so we can get more people on. I do see Hate, Love, Nothing and Gavin in the live chat here already. Shalom. Happy Tuesday afternoon, folks. Wow, it's actually still Monday here where I'm at. I guess New Zealand is pretty far on the other side of the globe, right? But nonetheless, shalom to you guys. Happy to have you guys here today. We have a pretty interesting topic here for you today. Of course, in my opinion, we always have interesting topics. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about them. But I guess to an extent, whether or not it's actually something that's good information and is edifying is actually the point. But the information which we are talking about here today on this Watchdog is pretty weird, but also kind of expected. And if you've been watching the show a long time, you'll know that we have been constantly warning about this sort of ecumenism that is greater than just an ecumenism of Christian faiths, but is actually a interfaith movement throughout all faiths, and how it seems to be primarily spearheaded by the Vatican, has been for quite some time, but Pope Francis is significantly better at it than previous popes. And, certain groups that seem to be associated with it include, but are not limited to, the World Council of Churches, United Nations, World Evangelical Council, World Alliance of Religions for Peace, so on and so forth. And of course, one of the biggest things we've been talking about with this has been the potential United Nations for religions, right? Which was actually pitched to, once again, for those of you who do not know, was actually pitched to Pope Francis by Shimon Peres, who is the former president of Israel. And I actually don't know how long it's been since I've shown that article. So a lot of people might think when I say something along those lines that it's a little bit conspiratorial and, something that perhaps didn't actually occur. So this is from Fox News from 2014. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick just so you guys know that this is actually not something that I have made up. Just a moment, let me get the screen shared. And again, I know longtime watchers have already seen this stuff, but I know a lot of people probably are not longtime watchers. I mean, let's face it, I'm still a small channel, and a lot of my viewers are going to be new virtually every day as a result. But yeah, so 2014, Israel's Shimon Peres proposes new peace initiative, UN of Religions, to Pope at Vatican visit, right? So this is not some kind of like conspiracy theory or anything like that. This is something that was actually proposed by the former president of Israel, who has now passed, because this was back in 2014, to the current and sitting Pope Francis. If you continue to read through the article, one of the things that you find is that Perez actually thought it would be not only a good idea to have a United Nations of Religions, but also thought that it would be a good idea to have the current Vatican leader. I don't know if it was going to be the Pope in total or just the current one, but wanted Francis to actually be heading this. And I don't want to read through this whole article. It wasn't the point of me showing it, but just to show you guys that indeed, and you can see it kind of on your screen here, right? This is a real thing that did occur, right? And this UN of Religions has been kind of the forefront. Once you understand that this is an event that did occur and that Pope Francis took it seriously, you can start to understand all of the strange doctrines and weird idiosyncrasies of the Pope Francis episcopate, right? Because this is the end goal, a UN of Religions, getting together for some kind of a global kumbaya, right? Where there is actually some level of international governance over faith. It's a real thing. And a lot of people think it's a really good idea. Not just, leaders and quote unquote reptilians and stuff like that. I, of course, say that tongue in cheek. They're not really reptilians. But you know what I mean? Like when people always say it's the elites and all that kind of thing. It's not just them. A lot of your friends probably think it's a good idea. A lot of your family probably thinks it's a good idea. Frankly, outside of fundamentalist Christian circles and traditionalist Catholic circles, admittedly, I don't know a whole lot of groups that don't think it's a good idea. Talk to somebody like, the Raging Atheist. Talk to a Leo Filius. Talk to a William Lane Craig even. What are you going to find? They probably don't think this is a bad idea, right? So this is a real thing that's occurring, and this is indeed the primary driving factor, in my opinion, behind everything that Pope Francis does, and all the comments he makes, all the articles he lets be published about him, the synods that he has. Excuse me, I am still a little bit having a cold. My apologies. But, this is the lens through which I think we need to understand the Pope Francis episcopate, right? So back to the point I'm talking about, right? So we've been warning about this for quite some time. And I say we because it actually isn't just me. Wasn't just me, I should say, right? If you guys recall, I had two co-hosts, and this will only be for people who watched back when I was on Facebook. So a lot of people might not even, the majority of watchers probably wouldn't know this, but for those who would recall, I did actually used to have two co-hosts on the Watchdog. My good friends Logan and Matt. And all we were collectively trying to warn about this push forward with Israel seeming to be the center and with the Vatican seeming to be the head of this idea of a one world organization. I won't say government because I don't want to get, I don't want to push it too far, but a one world organization for religions. And of course, the want for that to have some kind of power. Because you see this in the United Nations and the EU and the WHO and all these other kind of places too, right? A lot of times they really can't enforce their will on anybody, but they would certainly like to, as would anybody who, of course, is going to form some kind of an organization like this. The whole point of having international governance is to govern, obviously. It's, it's a fairly straightforward point. And as you guys may know, the watchdog, quote unquote, right? What are we watching? It's been primarily this, as well as Middle Eastern politics, right? And so why do I go into all of this right now? Well, because today I came across an article. I was actually not planning on doing this episode about what I'm doing this episode about. But I came across an article. It's actually last night that I came across it. That while I kind of I've expected this, and I've been talking about this for quite some time, and I've even seen things like this before, like when Pope Francis dedicated a Mormon temple in Rome in 2018, or when he had mass with the World Council of Churches in their 70-year anniversary in 2018, or when he had the Amazonian Synod, where he had Pachamama in St. Peter's Basilica afterwards, and even had people who were his underlings referring to her as Our Lady of the Amazon in 2019, right? There's been a lot of things that have kind of, obviously solidified this idea that I've had, that many others have had, outside of me as well. Just for the record, this isn't a unique idea to me. And yet every single time that it happens again, it always kind of does shock me, like just how close we really are to seeing something like this happen. And that's what this article today, or again, that's actually technically last night, but only read it today, right? That's what this article did for me once again, was showing like, wow, this is just, it's as real as I think and more real. And it's something that I almost can guarantee. I'm not a prophet, so I don't know, right? I don't speak for the Lord or anything like that. But I feel like I am like 99% sure that I will live to see the fruition of this group, this United Nations of Religions, right? It's just, we get closer and closer and closer. And so what's this article I'm talking about, right? You guys can kind of already see, of course, in my title, the Arch Blasphemous, which is what I like to call the Pope, has been calling for a interfaith prayer, not just a dialogue, a prayer at the Ziggurat in Ur. You heard that correctly. Pope Francis is going to be visiting the Ziggurat at Ur. And I'll explain exactly what that is for those of you who don't know, because I know some people won't know. And he actually plans on having an interfaith prayer there, not just a gathering, not just a dialogue, but he actually wants to have an interfaith prayer there. And of course, seeing what we've seen with, like, for example, the prayer, quote unquote, from Raphael Warnock, right? Or no, excuse me. That wasn't Raphael Warnock. It was Cleaver. I don't remember Cleaver's first name. Representative Cleaver, though, who gave that prayer to the quote monotheistic God who goes by many names, Brahma, and etc. Right? So we can see, what we might potentially, I guess, be looking forward to in this situation, right? But I kid you not, we are actually about to see Pope Francis lead an interfaith prayer at the Ziggurat at Ur. Now, again, so some people might not know what I'm talking about, right? So let's get into some details. I'm gonna share my screen here real quick. So first, before we get to the article, I just want to give you guys an idea as to what the Ziggurat at Ur is actually. Because of course, not everybody's going to know. Not everybody's a history nerd like myself. So Ur, first off, that's the first place to start, right? Ur. What is Ur? You may have heard of Ur if you're a Bible reader, which I imagine virtually everybody who watches this show at this point probably is. Ur of the Chaldees is a city in Genesis that is said to be the city where Abraham and his father were indeed born. Or at least where his father lived at some point in time. I don't know if his father was necessarily born there, but, tomato, tomato, I guess. Abraham was definitely born there. He was born there as Abram. He left there, went to Haran, where his father Terah died, and then he left Haran to the Promised Land, right? Is this Ur that Ur? Very likely in the eyes of many historians, though traditionally that's actually not true. Traditionally speaking, both the Jews and the Muslims, as well as Orthodox and Catholics in the area, actually thought it was a city that's a little bit further up north in Iraq that I believe is referred to as Erbil now, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong about what exactly it's referred to now. But nonetheless, this site is one of two potential sites for Ur of the Chaldees. And according to the majority of scholars, secular and conservative alike, I would point out, it is actually probably the Ur of the Chaldees that is spoken of in the book of Genesis. So to give you a little background as to what that is, right? What is Ur? Now, what is the Ziggurat at Ur? So the Ziggurat, or Great Ziggurat of Ur, which you can see in Sumerian here. So if you happen to know how to read that, more power to you. I definitely do not. And I'm not going to try and pronounce the name either. But it means temple whose foundation creates aura, right? Temple whose, so it's this word right here. Again, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but if you guys, happen to be into this kind of stuff, you can definitely try. And it means temple whose foundation creates aura, right? So the Ziggurat of Ur is a Neo-Sumerian ziggurat in what was the city of Ur near Nasiriyah in present-day Dakar province, Iraq. The structure was built during the early Bronze Age, 21st century BC, so it's a very old, very, very old structure, and had crumbled to ruins by the 6th century BC of the Neo-Babylonian period when it was restored by King Nabonidus, excuse me. I was the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, as you can see here. Show you a quick picture. It's actually a pretty impressive structure, right? Looks cool. Most ancient structures did. But let's continue, right? Going to skip over this little paragraph here real quick to actually get to what this actually is. The Ziggurat was built by King Ur-Nammu, who dedicated it in honor of Nana/Sin in approximately the 21st century BC, according to the short chronology, during the 3rd dynasty of Ur. So we had already seen that this is a temple, right? A temple whose foundation creates aura. Very interesting term. But not only is it a temple, but it's actually a temple to a pagan god, right? That pagan god is Nana. Who is Nana? Nana, otherwise known as Sin, is actually a god of the moon in Mesopotamian religions. Numerous different, versions of this god exist throughout the Mideast, as tends to be the case. As you can kind of see, like Jupiter and Zeus are the same. Well, so like Inanna and Ishtar, for example, are the same, right? And of course, there are people who are much, much, much more, knowledgeable about Sumerian mythology and stuff like that than I would be. But just to give you a general idea, right, of who this person is, it's a moon god, right? So this is a temple to a moon god. The massive step pyramid measured 210 feet or 64 meters in length, 45 meters or 148 feet in width, and over 30 meters or 98 feet in height. The height is speculative, as only the foundations of the Sumerian ziggurat have survived. The ziggurat was a piece in a temple complex that served as an administrative center for the city, and which was a shrine of the moon god Nana, the patron deity of Ur. So, I think it's good enough context, right? That's the city of Ur. This is what the ziggurat is. So, is it really the case? You may be a little skeptical. CJ, are you actually telling me that you have mainstream non-conspiratorial sources that are telling you that the Pope is going to go lead an interfaith prayer at a pagan temple that is dedicated to the moon god? And to that I say yes, actually. That is exactly what I'm telling you. Pope Francis to visit Ziggurat to bring together several faiths and hopefully lure more visitors, by Mohammed Ati. This is from Reuters. And you can find this from other websites, by the way, if you, for whatever reason, don't trust Reuters. Baghdad. Pope Francis is due to hold an interreligious prayer service at the ancient Mesopotamian site of Ur when he visits Iraq next week. An event local archaeologists hope will draw renewed attention to the place revered as the birthplace of Adam. And again, or Abraham, excuse me. And again, that is at least potential. One of two sites that I think have a really solid argument for it. Those other sites there are other sites, that have claimed it as well. Popular with Western visitors in the 1970s and 1980s, Ur is scarcely visited today after decades of war and political instability shattered Iraq's international tourism industry. The coronavirus crisis now also keeps local tourists away. Excuse me. Located about 300 kilometers or 200 miles south of the capital, Baghdad, the site compromises a pyramid-style ziggurat on an adjacent residential complex, as well as temples and palaces. It was excavated about 100 years ago by Leonard Woolley, a Briton who recovered treasures rivaling those found in Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt, but little work has since been done. On one of the, so hang on, I don't know if that was, no, that was not the end of the sentence. That was a weird, sorry. But little work has since been done on one of the world's oldest cities where urban dwelling, writing, and central state power began. Now, to be fair, that's a little bit deceptively written in a way. I mean, I don't know that we could definitively say that writing and central state power necessarily began in Ur. I'm sure there's a solid argument for it. I believe the Sumerian Kings list, if I'm not mistaken, does say that the first dynasty was at Ur. I could be wrong about that, though. Again, the Sumerians are not anywhere that I would say I have anything close to, even a soft expertise, right? That's just not something I've known very well. I've read a couple, like I've read, the Code of Hammurabi, right? And really, heard a lot of summaries and teachings about Enuma Elish, though I've never actually read it. Epic of Gilgamesh, same thing, but not a forte of mine, right? But either way, I don't think there's any possibility that we could definitively say that this is where this stuff began, I guess is my point. Not important. Continuing. According to the State Board for Antiquities and Heritage Director for Ur, Ali Kadim Ghanim, the complex next to the ziggurat dates back to about 1900 BC. And of course, what we had just read on Wikipedia had said it was the 21st century BC, which would be in the 2000s BC. But, give or take, right? A lot of people would have obviously different answers to what exactly the year is, because I don't think we have any, like chronicles, for example, of it, right? It's just something that we kind of have to do guesswork using archaeology. The father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Abraham, is described in the biblical book of Genesis as living in the city before God called upon him to create a new nation in a land he later learned was Canaan. I would like to point out very quickly, Abraham is not the father of Judaism or Islam. Judaism is a rabbinic bastardization of the Old Testament religion, something that, by the way, a lot of rabbis will admit. I just watched one admit that today in a debate with Dr. Michael Brown on the Unbelievable show. Not that it was today, but I was watching the debate today. And Islam is, of course, just the religion of a false prophet, right? Christianity is the legitimate not interpretation, but the legitimate continuation of the Hebrew Bible. Of course, that is my own belief, but I'm not really going to, I'm not here to stand down from that. And that is the absolute truth. The only other people who could potentially have a claim within Judaism would be Karaite Jews, because they do actually follow biblical, quote unquote, Judaism, I guess you could call it, but the biblical Israelite faith, right? But nonetheless, I just want to point that out. Abraham is not the father of Islam. He's the father of the Hebrews, and he is the father of the biblical Israelite religion. I would not call him the father of the rabbinic Judaism that is derived from the Pharisee sect that we currently have today. Call that my nitpicking if you like, but, it's my show, so don't like it. Go watch a different show. Quote, "This is why it is believed that this building or house was the house of the prophet Abraham," end quote. Now, let me say that one more time, just so you can get an idea of what people are saying about this. We just read that this is a temple that is dedicated to the moon god, whose name just so happens to be Sin, by the way. I don't think there's any etymological relation, but, the Lord definitely does like to let his people know with a big smack right in the face, right? Like, hey, this is obviously bad news bears. You see what I'm saying? But at any rate, this is a temple dedicated to a pagan god. And what is this person getting to say? Quote, "This is why it is believed that this building or house was the house of the prophet Abraham." Are you for real? You for real? According to Ghanaian, the housing settlement was restored in 1999 after Pope Francis's predecessor, John Paul II, announced a trip to Iraq. This visit was canceled when negotiations with the government of then Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein broke down. This time, Ghanem hopes that Pope Francis's visit will attract international attention to the site, which he says is badly needed to fund restoration works on its palaces and temples. Now, look, I am all for the preservation of history, absolutely. But the restoration of pagan temples, are you kidding me? I think that's taking it a little farther. Wouldn't you say that maybe that's a little bit farther than just preserving the history, right? We can maintain the thing that's already there, but do we really have to restore pagan temples? I don't know. Doesn't seem like a very Christian thing to do to me, if any of the people who are doing this are involved in the faith, which allegedly Pope Francis is. But, Catholicism is about as Christian as Islam. Oh, wait, Pope Francis thinks that's Christian too. Huh. It shows you what I know. Quote, "Not only tourism, but we believe that there will be a Christian pilgrimage season," Ghanem said. Un Ponte Per, yes, you heard that correctly. They want pilgrimage to this area. Un Ponte Per, an Italian-based organization, which I probably pronounced wrong, is working with the United Nations Development Program on infrastructure works such as paths, rest areas, and signposts, to help visitors. Roads around the site are being renovated, and power lines extended ahead of the Pope's visit. But without adequate funding, Ghanem says his administration has been limited to containing further damage to the site, such as digging trenches to divert rainwater from the ruins. Basra's Archbishop, Habib al-Nafali, what is going on here? Pages are not responding to me. It's just a moment, friends. I don't know why this is happening. I guess I can finish the paragraph, though. Basra's Archbishop, if I can speak, Basra's Archbishop, Habib al-Nafali, stressed the symbolic... oh, my goodness. Man, I am just not having a good time right now. Stressed the symbolic importance of the Pope's March 5th to 8th visit, as Iraq is still recovering from the war against the Islamic State, or ISIS, that destroyed scores of Christian heritage sites. Isn't there something that's happening here on March 4th? I don't know. That might just be an internet thing, but it just reminded me when I saw the date there, March 5th. Or maybe it's something that's not happening on March 4th. Maybe that's what it is. Sorry. Yeah, I'm remembering now. So I guess QAnon says something's going to happen on March 4th, and everybody's, correcting them because obviously QAnon is retarded. Anyway, sorry, little tangent in my own head. The interreligious prayer service, you ready for this? The interreligious prayer service will be attended by Christians, Muslims, Mandaean Sabaeans, Yazidi, and other religious minorities present in Iraq. Christians, Muslims, Mandaean Sabaean, Yazidi, and other religious minorities present in Iraq. I am not joking. This is real. This is actually going to happen on March the 5th. This now, it's interesting because people often will, make the claim or, use the phrase, back in biblical times. And it's interesting, my pastor recently, this last Sunday, it didn't have anything to do with this in particular, but he was just, speaking, and he made the comment, we're living in biblical times. And I got to be honest with you, when I read articles like this, and when I see the moves that global religious bodies and the Pope and certain other groups around the world, especially in the Middle East, when I see the moves that these people are actually doing, I got to be honest with you, we are definitely living in biblical times, my friends. Can you believe this? There is the quote unquote infallible leader of the Christian world, the vicar of Christ, allegedly, which is a blasphemous statement, by the way, is going to hold an interreligious prayer with people who do not pray even to the quote unquote Abrahamic God, right? I'll show you who the Yazidis are in a minute. But people who do not pray to the true God, people who do not worship the true God, right? With false religions, he's going to bring these people to this area, pray with them. And the only way he can pray with them is if he's praying to a false god, by the way, at a temple to a pagan god whose name just so happens to be sin. We are living in biblical times. We are living in biblical times. That's all I can say about that. Christians, Muslims, Mandaean Sabaeans, Yazidis, Muslims who completely and totally bastardize the faith, who deny that Jesus Christ is the Lord, who deny the preservation of the scriptures, who deny that God can be a father, even in the way that he's father to me and you, let alone the way that he's father to Jesus Christ, right? Well, we're going to pray with them. Mandaean Sabaeans who reject virtually all of the prophets. That's a super obscure sect. I might show you a little bit about them too. But virtually all of the prophets, Moses, Daniel and Ezekiel and Elijah and all them, right? Only people they accept are Noah, Adam, and John the Baptist, surprisingly, and a couple others. I think Enoch is one of them, right? We're going to pray with these people. Oh, by the way, Muslims, one of the things I forgot, and not the Catholics would have a problem with this, considering their history of flagrant pedophilia and child abuse, and also their history of going out and committing literal genocide against religious and ethnic minorities. But, the Muslims just so happen to be the people who wage constant jihad and are out grooming gangs of young Christian and Western girls out in places they have decided to invade by virtue of the refugee crisis. I said what I said. And y'all know it, just for the record. Every single one of you knows that that's true. Islam is an evil religion. And to be fair, every religion outside of Christianity is an evil religion. But Islam is a particularly egregious and disgusting faith, right? I don't mean disrespect, but, to an extent, I kind of mean disrespect. Like, we can't pull punches. These are false deities. These are idols, false gods. We can't be praying with them in a temple dedicated to a pagan deity. That's just not how this works. Anyways, the last part here, the focus will be on harmony between religious groups. You heard that correctly. Harmony between religious groups. And of course, do I want to have war between religious groups? No, of course, that's not what I'm saying. But do you really think that that's what they mean when they say harmony between religious groups? Or do you think, considering the fact that they're coming together and praying with each other, that maybe they mean something a little bit different? Considering the fact that we have this peace initiative, UN of Religions, that Pope Francis has actively been a part of. It was pitched to him in 2014. He's been pushing it ever since, right? Considering this, do you think they mean something a little bit more by harmony of religions? Dare I say you would be willfully blind and willfully ignorant if you did not see something a little more. I won't call you stupid because a stupid person could see it. The focus will be on harmony between religious groups in a service the Vatican has named Prayer for the Sons and Daughters of Abraham. Do you guys recall when I had said that the Abraham Accords was going to be used for more than just Middle East peace? That this idea of coming together under the authority of Abraham was going to be used by religious groups. Do you recall when I said that? If you don't recall when I said that, you can find the video, the Abraham Accords, that I did on the Watchdog. It was only a couple months ago. I don't know if you're in the chat, Brother Nicholas, because I'm not looking at it. But if you are, please do share that. Because guess what? That's exactly what's happened. And by the way, I got to say something here real quick, guys, because it gets to the point sometimes when it comes to these things with these predictions where it's like, I'm almost not surprised that I'm right anymore. And the thing is that has nothing to do with me. You guys need to realize that there is a pattern being followed here, right? And frankly, there shouldn't really even be a necessity for a watchdog. People who are aware, people who are Christians in particular, should kind of be aware of this already. I even think people from a nationalistic and conservative angle, should be aware of this kind of stuff. But especially people who are Christians. This should be something that you expect and a pattern that you see regardless. And it's not a hard pattern to find, right? You look at the players, you look at the goal and the agenda, and you look at the things that they've done in the past and that they plan to do in the future, and you start to see a trajectory. And the trajectory is to the destination that they told you that they were going to in the beginning. It's not that difficult. You just got to listen to them. And it's weird that people have we've gotten to a point now where just taking these people at their word is considered conspiracy. We're literally just taking them at their word. In fact, I should rephrase what I said. I don't predict things. I simply take them at their word. They are telling you that they want to have a global body for religious groups. They are telling you that they want some enigmatic religious group that sort of just bleeds all of the different faiths into each other. They are telling you that they think that this God that you reverence so much, that you love so dearly, right, is actually just this vague, enigmatic, monotheistic God who goes by many names, one of which happens to be Brahma. That's what they want you to believe. They're saying it blatantly. They say it in your congresses. They say it in your churches. They say it on your movies and in your television and in your music even. They say it all the time, everywhere. It's constant. But we've been so spoiled by stupid Illuminati conspiracy theories that when we see people telling us exactly what they want to do on mainstream sources, we for some reason disbelieve it. Well, believe it. It's here. This is the way the world is moving. You will almost definitely live to see this group come to power and see its headquarters centered probably in Jerusalem. That's my prediction. You're going to live to see it happen. You're going to live to see the two-state solution come to fruition. You're going to live to see the internationalization of the old city. You're going to live to see the virtual and effective end of the Protestant Reformation. These things will happen, friends. What do you think they mean by we have 9 years left to fight climate change? Climate change is a global event, right? When you have a Paris Climate Accord, is only one or a couple countries signing into that, or is it a global event? Globalism is the way of the future, and it will impact your faith. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Now, real quick, I said I would, so I'm gonna. What are these religious groups, right? Yazidis, first off. What are Yazidis? Well, Yazidis are an endogamous, excuse me. I'm sure that I said that wrong. Endogamous? I don't know. I'm going to have to look that word up. Practice of marrying within a specific social group, caste, or ethnic group. Learned a new word. Cool. And mostly Kumanji-speaking minority indigenous to Upper Mesopotamia. The majority of Yazidis remaining in the Middle East today live in the disputed territories of northern Iraq, primarily in the Nineveh and Dohuk governorates. There is a disagreement on whether Yazidis are a religious subgroup of Kurds or a distinct ethno-religious group among scholars and Kurds. It's among scholars and Kurds and Yazidis themselves. There's a debate between all of them. Excuse me. The Yazidi religion is monotheistic and can be traced back to Abraham, to Moses, to Jehovah, the God of Israel. No. The Yazidi religion is monotheistic and can be traced back to ancient Mesopotamian religions. Weird. That happens to be the temple they're praying at. I wonder if there's a little bit of a coincidence there. Anyways, they were victims of a genocide by ISIS in 2014, which is, of course, absolutely terrible. And it lets you know a little bit about that. But I want to get to their religion, right? What do these people believe? Yazidism, otherwise known as Shafardin, as you can see here. It's a monotheistic ethnic religion followed by the mostly Kumanji-speaking Yazidis and based on belief in one God who created the world and entrusted it into the care of 7 holy beings known as angels. Preeminent among these angels is Tawusa Melek, also written as Melek Taus, who is the leader of the angels and who has authority over the world. That's interesting. An angel, a preeminent angel, the most preeminent angel in the whole, whatever you would call that, I guess, troop of angels, right? Who has authority over the world. Does that sound like something that you've heard from some religious book that maybe you read frequently? I don't know. Maybe I'm just tripping. It's the Bible, by the way. Principal beliefs. Yazidism knows only one eternal God named Jehovah? Jesus? Some version of the Tetragrammaton? Even Elohim? No. Swede. Or Zwede is probably how you pronounce that. Zwede. I don't know how you actually say it. But this dude, whoever this guy is, here's some sources you can get from it, by the way. According to some Yazidi hymns, known as Qs, God has 1,001 names. The monotheistic God who goes by many names. One of which happens to be Brahma. I'm just saying. God has created the universe and the 7 angels. Among the 7 angels, Tawuse Melek, the leader of the angels. God appointed Tawuse Melek to care of worldly affairs. Yazidism is a unique phenomenon, one of the most illustrative examples of ethno-religious identity, which is based on religion exclusively specific for the Yazidis and called Shafardin by them. Excuse me. I mean, I wish I was making this stuff up, friends, but I'm not. This is actually one of the groups who is going to go to this pagan temple to the moon god Sin and pray in a prayer that is led by allegedly the prime, supreme, infallible vicar of Christ and leader of all Christians. Yazidis are called, and I'm going to pronounce this probably wrong, but who knows? I've been doing good so far. Yazidis are called Melete Tawisi Melek, the nation of Melek Tas. Tawisi Melek refused to bow down before the first human when God ordered the 7 angels to do so. The command was actually a test meant to determine which of these angels was most loyal to God by not prostrating themselves to someone other than their creator. Kind of an interesting story. Why? Well, because in Islam, Satan, actually, it's funny. They're pointing it out. Actually, I just noticed in this next paragraph. In Islam, Satan is actually the being who does not who does not prostrate to man. And I'm not saying that Islam is true, but I made the comment earlier that this preeminent angel who has dominance over the earth sounds a little bit like something else that you may or may not have heard in a religious book that you probably read, and then I whispered that it was the Bible, right? And of course, the reference I was making was to Lucifer, right? That's what it sounds like is Lucifer. And as if they wanted to hammer home, yes, we are devil worshippers, they actually stole the story from the Islamic devil as well. Oh my goodness. Can you make this stuff up? I'm sure somebody can. Maybe Tolkien could do it. I don't know, dude. Oh! These people are going to be praying with the alleged leader of the Christian world. And there are people who believe this dude is actually the leader of the Christian world. It blows my mind. It blows my mind completely. This belief has been linked by some people to Islamic revelation on Iblis, who also refused to prostrate to Adam despite God's express command to do so. Because of the similarity to the Sufi tradition of Iblis, some followers of other monotheistic religions of the region identified the Peacock Angel, which is another thing that they call it, Meliktos, the Peacock Angel, which... Oh, hang on, I'll get to that in a second. Identify the Peacock Angel with their own unredeemed evil spirit, Satan, which has incited centuries of persecution of the Yazidis as devil worshippers, which, by the way, I do not, of course, endorse any persecution of any people of any kind. So just to get that out of the way. They call him the Peacock Angel, though. Isn't that interesting? Well, what does the phrase peacocking usually refer to in the modern day? I'll give you a hint. It's related to the word cocky. Yes, it's being incredibly arrogant. It's lifting yourself up and letting everybody look at you with all of your wondrous beauty and splendor. So who would be the Peacock Angel, according to the Bible? That's right, that would be Lucifer. You win $1 million fictional dollars if you got that correct. I wish I was making this up, friends. I wish I was. Persecution of Yazidis has continued into their home communities. Again, want to, of course, pray for that to stop. And of course, for these people to come to Christ also, as many of them who are actually called, right? So Yazidis, however, believe Tawiss-Amalek is not a source of evil or wickedness. They consider him to be the leader of the archangels, not a fallen angel. And of course, that's not really a refutation of the fact that this being happens to do absolutely everything that both the Islamic and Christian Satan does, right? But it's just their own personal apologetic, right? Nonetheless, Yazidis argue that the order to bow to Adam, which, to be fair, God would not have ever ordered that, right? That is an Islamic paganism that they just made up. There's a lot of little paganisms inserted into Islam, just like there's a lot of little paganisms inserted into Catholicism, by the way. But Yazidis argue that the order to bow to Adam was only a test for Tawiss-Amalek, since if God commands anything, then it must happen. In other words, God could have made him submit to Adam, but gave Tawiss-Amalek the choice as a test. God had directed him not to bow to any other being, and his refusal to the latter order to bow to Adam was thus obedience to God's original command. Obviously, this logic is stupid because you have the choice to go rape or not rape somebody. And of course, that doesn't mean that that is somehow a test. That's just ridiculous. But at any rate, the Yazidis of Kurdistan have been called many things, most notoriously devil worshippers. Gee, I wonder why. A term used both by unsympathetic neighbors and fascinated Westerners, which, to be fair, I would consider myself the latter. I'm very interested in other people's faiths, but I'm also, I'm not going to sit here and lie to them, right? Your faith it's wrong. It's evil. Full stop. End of the conversation. The sensational epithet is not only deeply offensive to the Yazidis themselves, but quite simply wrong. Non-Yazidis have associated Meliktos with Shaitan, the Islamic Arab name, or Satan, but Yazidis find that offensive and do not actually mention that name. Well, duh, right? The Pope doesn't call on that name either. I mean, what? Did I say that? I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun. I don't even know how many people are watching this right now, but nonetheless, I hope you're having fun. The Yazidis believe in a divine triad. That's interesting. The Yazidis believe in a divine triad. The original God of the Yazidis is considered to be remote and inactive in relation to his creation, except to contain and bind it together within his essence. The first emanation is Tawu-Semelech, who functions as the ruler of the world. The second hypostasis of this trinity, that's actually exactly why I thought it was interesting. I'm glad they used the term, is the Sheikh Adi. The third is Sultan Izid. These are the three hypostases of the one God. The identity of these three is sometimes blurred, with Sheikh Adi considered to be a manifestation of Tawu-Semelech and vice versa. The same also applies to Sultan Izid. A popular Yazidi story narrates the fall of Tawu-Semelech and his subsequent rejection by humanity, with the exception of the Yazidis. Isn't that interesting? Fall of Tawu-Semelech. What other angel fell in, some other book that may or may not be the most popular selling book of all time? Oh, that's right. That was Lucifer. Man, I can't believe these people have ever been called devil worshippers. Anyways, you guys get the idea, right? So this is the Yazidis. Pope Francis is going to go pray with these people at a pagan temple on March the 5th. That's actually happening in real life. Mandaism, is the other one. Oh, no, that's, man, I thought I had it highlighted. Mandaism. So what's this one? I assume you guys already know Islam, so that's why I'm not going into that one. Mandaism or Mandaeanism. And then again, it shows all the pronunciations and stuff like that. I'm not even going to try with any of those. I'm currently learning Hebrew, and by that I mean I've just gotten to the vowel section. I'm lazy, and really I should know a lot more about it than I do now. But definitely not Arabic or Aramaic. Anyways, also known as Sebanism, is a monotheistic and Gnostic religion. Yes, Gnostic religion. For those of you who may be students of church history, you will know that the Gnostics are these weird, super esoteric knowledge cults that basically believed they had this secret knowledge that they had to hide from the rest of the world, and only super secret, awesome dudes could get this same knowledge. And it all actually goes back to this guy named Marcianus Sinop, who actually made the claim that the Old Testament God was evil. They called him the demiurge, meaning the architect. And he said that he was evil, and that the evidence of this was not only that he did evil things in the Old Testament, which is, of course, false, but also that only an evil being could create an evil world, which is also, of course, false, total non sequitur. But nonetheless, from Marcion's ideas, we get all subsequent Gnosticism. And by the way, he also did believe that Jesus was the son of some different God from some higher aeon. So he splits Jesus from the Old Testament as well, which is, of course, completely ridiculous, because if you don't have a functioning Old Testament, then the New Testament, I mean, why do we call it the New Testament? Jesus is the Messiah of what exactly? Right? In other words, you can't toss out the Old Testament. It's just not how it works. But at any rate, it's a monotheistic and Gnostic religion with a strongly dualistic cosmology. Its adherents, the Mandaeans, revere Adam, Abel, Seth, Enos, Noah, Shem, Aram, and especially John the Baptist. Meaning, of course, by extension, they would reject Moses, they would reject Abraham, they would reject Jesus Christ, of course, which is the big one. But nonetheless, and all the other prophets, Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, so on and so forth. The Mandaeans have been counted among the Semites, which just means that they are part of the Semitic language group. They're probably ethnically very closely related to Arabs, Aramaics, the Hebrews, so on and so forth. I've been counted among the Semites and speak a dialect of Eastern Aramaic known as Mandaic. So they actually have their own language. The name Mandaean is said to come from the Aramaic word manda, meaning knowledge, within the Middle East, but outside of their community, the Mandaeans are more commonly known as the Arabic Suba, singular is Subi, or Sabians, which is actually what they would be called in an English translation of the Quran. The term Suba is derived from the Aramaic root word related to baptism. The Neo-Mandaic, or Mandaic, is Sabi. Occasionally, Mandaeans are called Christians of St. John. That would be a false statement. That would be a misnomer. They reject Jesus Christ. There is literally no possible way that you could call them Christians. However, Wikipedia did not make that up. That is something that they are called. Here's the source for you. Anyways, in the Quran, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to roll that R. Anyways, the Sabians, Arabic as Sabiyun, are mentioned 3 times alongside Jews and Christians. Most critical scholars today believe the term refers to the Manichaeans or Elkaisites. I don't know. You know what? Forget it. Those people. These ones right here. Anyways, who followed Mani and was... I just noticed I didn't even highlight it. These people right here. Who followed Mani and was unrelated to the Gnostic Mandaeans. According to most scholars, Mandaeanism originated sometime in the 1st century AD in southwestern Mesopotamia. However, some scholars take the view that Mandaeism is older and dates from pre-Christian times. Of course, it'd be a little ridiculous if they consider themselves to be adherents of John the Baptist for them to date to pre-Christian times, but whatever. Neither here nor there. The religion has been practiced primarily around the lower Karun, Euphrates and Tigris, and the rivers that surround the Shat al-Arab waterway, part of the southern Iraq and Khuzestan province in Iran. There are thought to be between 60,000 and 70,000 Mandaeans worldwide. A bunch of terrible stuff happened to them in the Iraq War, all that kind of stuff. But what do they believe, once again? Right? Because that's really what we're interested in here. Mandaeism, as the religion of the Mandaean people, is based more on a common heritage than any set of religious creeds and doctrines. The corpus of Mandaean literature, though quite large, covers topics such as eschatology, the knowledge of God, and the afterlife in an unsystemic manner. Moreover, it is known only to the priesthood and a few lay people. This is that weird secret cultiness that I was telling you about, where only a few special bloke get to actually figure out what this religion is all about. Of course, the complete opposite of what the true God wants, right? According to E.S. Drower, the Mandaean Gnosis is characterized by 9 features which appear in various forms in other Gnostic sects. It's hard to pronounce that T sometimes for me. Anyways, number 1, a supreme and formless entity, the expression of which in time and space is creation of spiritual, etheric, and material worlds and beings. Production of these is delegated by it to a creator or creators who originated it. The cosmos is created by archetypal man, who produces it in similitude to his own shape. Let's read that again, because let's remember, Pope Francis is going to be praying with these people on March the 5th in a pagan shrine. Because apparently we get to pray with pagans now. I don't know. The leader of the Christian world said so. Sorry, it just blows my mind people actually believe that. But anyways, number 1, a supreme formless entity, the expression of which in time and space is creation of spiritual, etheric, and material worlds and beings. Production of these is delegated to it, or by it rather, to a creator or creators who originated it. The cosmos is created by archetypal man, who produces it in similitude to his own shape. Again, the source for this is this E.S. Drower, who you can obviously read more about. And, of course, there's a little source right here. Number 2, as a feature of this dualism, countertypes a world of ideas. Number 3, the soul is portrayed as an exile, a captive, his home and origin being the supreme entity to which he eventually returns. Point number 4, planets and stars influence fate and human beings and are also places of detention after death. A savior, by the way, you did hear that correctly. Places of detention after death. They believe that stars, right, and planets even, are the places that you end up going when you die. L. Ron Hubbard did not make that up. He actually stole that from somebody else. It's a little Scientology joke, by the way. He probably had no idea who the Mandaeans were, to be honest with you. But at any rate, number 5, a savior spirit or savior spirits, plural, which of course that is definitely counter to Christian revelation, which assists the soul on his journey through life and and after it to worlds of light. Point number 6, a cult language of symbol and metaphor, ideas and qualities are personified. Point number 7, mysteries, i.e. sacraments to aid and purify the soul to ensure that his rebirth into a spiritual body and his ascent from the world of matter. These are often adaptations of existing seasonal and traditional rites to which an esoteric interpretation is attached. In the case of the Nazareans, the interpretation is based on the creation story, C1 and 2, especially on the divine man, Adam, as crowned and appointed king priest, or anointed king priest. Yes, so the divine man, according to them, not Jesus, Adam, actually. And Pope Francis is going to go pray with these people at a pagan shrine to a god whose name happens to be Sin. Point number 8, great secrecy is enjoined upon initiates, full explanation of 1, 2, and 8 being reserved for those considered to be able to understand and preserve the Gnosis. So congratulations, you actually know more about this faith now than most of the people who actually follow it, because the priesthood is creepy like that. What is their cosmology? As noted above, Mandaean theology is not systemic. There is no one single authoritative account of the creation of the cosmos, but rather a series of several accounts. Some scholars, such as Edmondo Luprieri, maintain the comparison of these different accounts may reveal the diverse religious influences upon which the Mandaeans have drawn, and the ways in which the Mandaean religion has evolved over time. In contrast with the religious text of the Western Gnostic sects formerly found in Syria and Egypt, the earliest Mandaean religious texts suggest a more strictly dualistic theology, typical of other Iranian religion. I'm just going to restart this whole sentence. I messed it up. In contrast with the religious texts of the Western Gnostic sects formerly found in Syria and Egypt, the earliest Mandaean religious texts suggest a more strictly dualistic theology, typical of other and you see, I just messed this up again, of other Iranian religions such as Zoroastrianism, Zervanism, Manichaeism, and the teachings of Mazdak. In these texts, instead of a large pleroma, there is a discrete division between light and darkness. The Mandaean god is known as Hayi Rabbi, or the Great Living God. Other names used are Mare de Rabuta, Lord of Greatness, and Melka de Nura, King of Light. Ptahil, I probably said that right, Ptahil, the third emanation alone, does not constitute the demiurge, which is, again, another word for architect, but only fills that role insofar as he is the creator of the material world. So the creator of the material world is separate from this great God, right? Which is, again, back to that Marcionism that I was telling you about. Ptahil is the lowest of a group of 3 emanations, the other 2 being Yushamin, first emanation, Joshamin, and Abathur, the second emanation. Abathur's demiurgic role consists of sitting in judgment upon the souls of mortals. So the creator is different from the judge. The role of Yushamin, the first emanation, is more obscure, wanting to create a world of his own. He was severely punished, for opposing the King of Light. The name may derive from Lau Has Samayim, in Hebrew, Yehovah, or Yahweh as this one renders it, of the heavens. In other words, the one who they're saying is actually punished for not listening to the true God is the God of Israel. So, if we've understood this correctly, Pope Francis is about to go pray at a pagan temple, by the way, to a pagan moon god, with a group of people, not only with a group of people who are blatant devil worshippers, and not only with another group of people who are among the most evil and violent religion on the entire planet, but also with a group of people who actually makes the claim that the God of Israel, who is the God you worship if you are a Christian, is evil, was punished somehow by the King of Light, who he, I guess, is not. None of this is fun, honestly. It's somewhat spooky, I'm not going to lie. Spooky isn't the right word. It's actually kind of terrifying. Because, who knows what we're actually going to have to see being in these days, right? And of course, I don't know. It could be nothing. Who knows, right? God knows. And that's why we need to keep the faith. But nonetheless, chief prophets, Mandaeans recognize several prophets. Yahia Yohanan, known in Christianity as, or Yohana, Yahia Yohana, known in Christianity as John the Baptist, is accorded a special status higher than his role in Christianity and in Islam. Mandaeans do not consider John to be the founder of their religion, but revere him as one of their greatest teachers, tracing their beliefs back to Adam, which of course cannot possibly be true because the Bible would trace its beliefs back to Adam. And I'm sorry if that sounds like I'm assuming my beliefs, but yeah, I kind of am, because the God of the Bible is the true God. Not apologizing for that. Mandaeans do not believe in the sanctity of Abraham. Big problem. Moses. Huge problem. Or Jesus. Greatest of all problems. But recognize other prophetic figures from the Abrahamic religions, such as Adam, his son Seth, his grandson Enosh or Enosh, as well as Nu or Noah, Sam or Shem, Ram or Aram, whom they consider to be their direct ancestors. Mandaeans also do not recognize the Holy Spirit in the Talmud and Bible, also who is known in Mandaic as Ruha or Ruha de Kudsha or Ruha Mastanita. Excuse me. Did I say that right? I did say that right. Mastanita. Yeah, there you go. All right. In the same way, instead of being viewed positively as a Holy Spirit, she, yes, it is a woman, is viewed negatively as the personification of the lower emotional and feminine elements of the human psyche. So they degrade the Holy Spirit. By the way, I would like to let you guys know something. The Bible actually makes a claim that blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is the one unpardonable sin. Jesus says it explicitly. He says all sins may be forgiven, but blasphemy against the Holy Spirit shall not be forgiven. And these people have made blasphemy against the Holy Spirit a faith. And Pope Francis plans on praying with them, as well as numerous other non-Christian, basically pagans, at a pagan temple dedicated to a pagan moon god. And you guys get the idea, right? So these are the Mandaeans. We already figured out who the Yazidis are. They're all going to to pray with Pope Francis. And again, this is not InfoWars. This isn't the Tatum Report. This isn't Natural News. This is Reuters, a well-respected, very well-known mainstream news source. And, of course, it's not the only news source that is going to have this story. As, since this is a mainstream story, you could just look this up, obviously, online. In fact, to give you an idea of that, I usually get the Jerusalem Post when I'm reading this one about Shimon Peres and the UN of Religions, right? But, of course, when they're real stories, they're not just going to come from one source, right? Because people pick them up to start talking about it. That's kind of the point. Anyways, I wish I was making this up, friends, but I'm not. I'm absolutely positively not. This is the real deal, right? This is absolutely what is going down. And it's according to mainstream sources. It's according to the horse itself. In this case, I guess you could call it the snake itself. But yeah, I mean, what more is there really to say on this, right? This is going to happen. Mark your calendars. It's March 5th through March 8th. Pope Francis is going to lead an interfaith prayer with Muslims and pagans at a pagan temple dedicated to the pagan god Sin, otherwise known as Nana, who is a moon god. That's happening in real life. Let's see what the comment section has to say about this. I haven't been actually looking at my comment section at all day. So, I see Tog was here. And Jamie, shalom, Jamie. Jamie, I will be getting back to you very soon. In fact, we'll probably have the ability to do an open room tomorrow if you're available. I want to do a video on Brandon Tatum, but I might even make them both one and the same thing. And I got to do a response video to Josh Bowen and The Rage with some of the stuff they said about comparing the Mosaic Law to the Code of Hammurabi. But nonetheless, if you're interested in that, I'll probably have one of those tomorrow. I just see that you're here. Do you suppose, Jamie actually asks, do you suppose Francis is the 8th like the 7th? Meaning the Antichrist, by the way. 7 kings shall rise, right? I'm paraphrasing, but the 8th is not yet, but will come. But is like unto the 7th. I actually tend to think yes, but I don't want to definitively say that because he is 83. And, you know, if he does die and is indeed not the Antichrist or false prophet, right? The damage he's done is still Antichrist and it will lead to the building up of it, right? And I don't want too much, I don't want people to put too much in the idea that he specifically must be that guy, right? Because I don't want them to be turning away from the knowledge of all of the stuff that he's done if it turns out that he does pass on and a new pope rises, right? But I do happen to believe that myself, that Pope Francis is probably the prophesied figure in Revelation that we would call the Antichrist or son of perdition. Anyways, what else do we have here? Hate, love, nothing, and Jamie kind of going back and forth with some stuff. Queen of Heaven was Gnostic, right? Yes and no. The Queen of Heaven actually, that motif kind of comes from Mesopotamia. Really, really, really ancient. Sumerians, Babylonians, Akkadians, Assyrians, they all kind of have this idea of the Queen of Heaven. The Queen of Heaven is obviously different depending on which one of those particular, paganisms you're actually talking about. But nonetheless, a lot of Gnostics, though, do buy into it. And indeed, a lot of Mariology, which, of course, Catholics call her the Queen of Heaven. But a lot of Mariology is actually based in Gnosticism. For example, the idea of a immaculate conception, right, of Mary, that actually comes directly from Gnostic sources. Also, her perpetual virginity comes directly from Gnostic sources. So definitely some relation there for sure. Jamie has a joke here. Just love Jesus. It doesn't really, really, really matter. Which, of course, the funniest thing about that joke is that, all the best lies have truth in them, right? Indeed, it is true that if you just love Jesus, that's all that matters. But if you truly love Jesus, at least according to Jesus, you'll keep his commandments, right? Poor Iraqi tourism was once a beautiful place to come. Very true. It has been shattered. And that does definitely suck. A lot of other stuff here. Tog saying, nice show. Thank you very much. The way of Christ actually lays a foundation for us to truly hate Islam, but still love Muslims. I absolutely adore that statement, Brother Jamie. That is 100% facts. We despise, we loathe, we condemn the absolutely satanic doctrine that is Islam. But if we do that for any reason other than the salvation of Muslims to the glory of Jesus Christ, then we need to check our own hearts. He also says for sure a pattern. They're using a script dead on. That's very true. Very true. Universal Artisan says true, CJ. I guess I'm not 100% sure what I was saying at that time. I assume that it was, considering what Jamie had just said a couple of minutes earlier, that it was when I was talking about the fact that they're following a script, and that I'm not predicting things. I'm just taking them at their word. It's a perversion of the book of Enoch. I guess I'm not 100% sure what that refers to. Universal Artists, if you can remind me what that refers to in the comment section, please do. Daniel, in September the 23rd, 2017, the Revelation 12 sign happened. It said that she would have a place made for her by God for 1,260 days. 1,260 days after September 23rd, 2017. Is in fact March 6th, 2021. Wow. You know what's crazy? Is I've been told this by Daniel before, and I totally did not put those two together. That is super weird. Ha. Bro, that is just No. Oh my goodness. What? And March 5th happens to be when they're going to be having this. Oh my goodness. Bro. That's insane. And by the way, so the Revelation 12 sign, just so you guys know, it's the woman pregnant with child with a crown of 12 stars on her head and the moon at her feet, cloaked with the sun, and dragon sitting to devour the child. And so in 2017, what happened was Virgo, the Virgin, of course, constellation, had Jupiter, the king planet, in its what you would consider to be its quote womb, right? If you were actually personifying the constellation, and it had 12 stars at what appeared to be the head of Virgo, which were the constellation Leo, as well as a couple planets actually, and of course, you know, from the perspective of somebody who is seeing these in the sky, it'd be indistinguishable, right? The moon being at the feet, directly at the point of birth, quote unquote. And why do I say birth, quote unquote? Well, because Jupiter, the planet, was in this womb area for 9 months and then happened to have a birth, quote unquote, this December 23rd, 2017, while the moon was at the feet and the sun was directly behind Virgo with these, you know, with Leo and these 12 stars on what appeared to be Virgo's head. You can, by the way, totally fact check me on that. You will discover it is true. You will discover it is true. And you will discover that you can find it once again on sources that are not, you know, endtimesuponus.com or something like that. Right? Thank you for sharing that, by the way, Daniel. That was absolutely awesome. The sign for revelation happened as a sign of Christ's birth. So Jamie, so I know what you mean. It's not what that you're wrong, right? But what you got to understand is that Revelation is talking about a future event that is already drawing upon that Christ event that's already taken place, right? In other words, John wouldn't be prophesying Jesus's birth because Jesus's birth and indeed crucifixion had already happened by Revelation, right? So I see what you mean for sure, but nonetheless, it is prophesying a future event. Great stream, CJ. I appreciate you, UA. Their religion offends me because Jesus is God, captain of the host of heaven. Amen. Daniel says I just did the math. It is March 6th. Babylon is a wide tent. I have Adventist roots. We don't do dates. Yeah, I feel you on that, Jamie. I do feel you on that because, like, you know, people can get a little bold with their dates. I don't necessarily know what the fruition of that 1,260 days would mean if that is indeed what this is. But you got to admit, pretty weird that it happens to end at the time that they're all going to go pray to a pagan, well, actually, you know, it is to a pagan god, right? I mean, we've seen what they mean by the god who goes by many names, and it is absolute paganism for sure. Which actually, yeah, Daniel points that out. Anyways, though, very mystery religion language. Yep, exactly right. That Gnostic nonsense, right? Contend that all this stems from the actual first lie in the garden. Completely agree. Completely, man, Jamie, I'm going to love having you as a debate partner because we agree on virtually everything. Universal Artisan says it gets worse. Indeed, it does. Indeed, it does. It will get worse from here, and it'll continue to shock us, even though it's not really shocking, and it's something we should all be expecting. It's just hard not to be shocked when you see these things happen. Like when you really realize you are definitely living in biblical times, right? See Walter Veith. He comes from there, lives there now and again. Comes from mystery religion, I assume is what you mean. I guess I'm not sure. Tog says pretty cool stuff. Thank you. Jimmy Russell says agreed. Thank you also. I appreciate you guys. By the way, if you do think this is cool stuff, right? If you think this is important stuff, please do show some support. Now, of course, I'm sure that you two probably already do, right? But for those who are not in here, right? We very much appreciate hitting that like button, getting this shared to all your different social media accounts. Subscribing, hitting that bell if you want to get notified of this. I do 2 podcasts, actually, Unapologetics, which is actual apologetics, and then the Watchdog, which is this, talking about news, specifically news in regards to these globalist groups and the Middle East. And of course, do open rooms and debates and stuff like that on here as well. And if you guys want to support me financially, and if you think that this is actually something that's worth it, right, I do plan on making this a career, so you can definitely find me on Patreon at TheCynicogue if that's something you're interested in as well. Any version of support in any way, shape, or form is absolutely a blessing as far as I am concerned, and I thank you for it. Continuing. Oh, I got an answer from UA. The book of Enoch is referenced in Jude. Many people in those days supposedly worshipped the fallen angels until they were dealt with by God. It ties into the Genesis interpretation of Nephilim being fallen angel hybrids. This attempt was to breed out the possibility of Jesus, hence the flood, and Noah being pure in his generations. I take it loosely only because of Jude's reference. All right, so I see your clarification there. And so correct me if I'm wrong, I guess, UA, but basically what you're saying now is that this Yazidi religion sounds like it's a, or maybe the Mandaean one sounds like it is actually a bastardization of this book of Enoch, which you say you're taking loosely because of the Jude reference, which I recall the reference actually, which you speak of. That's interesting. I'm glad that you commented that. Gives us some stuff to consider. Jamie says, doesn't necessarily preclude both. Completely agree, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it is scripture. Also, completely agree. We have the book of Revelation. Also, completely agree. And then UA does just confirm what I just pointed out there. So thank you for that confirmation. So let's just got through the comments. So I appreciate you guys, of course. Looks like we are probably going to be about ready to head out here. I know that it's not typical that not only our pre-article conversation, but also the entire show ends up being about one thing. But I'm sure you guys understand that I felt this one thing was that important. It's just such an absolutely blatant example of the fact that we are truly living in biblical times. And indeed, that biblical times are a thing, because that's the greatest part about this, right? It's scary to see the fruition of prophecy and stuff like that, right? It's scary to see the signs of the times, but prophecy and the signs of the times only exist because the Bible is true, because your Redeemer lives, right? Because Jehovah is indeed the God of the universe who has created all things, and by all things, by him, all things are sustained, right? Because of the fact that that is a fact, we see the things that we see. So while it's scary, take heart, right? What does the Bible say? When you hear these things, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. So I want to leave you guys with that. And I guess I'll just kind of go through. I just did. So, but I'll just go through, the formalities. Please do like and share and subscribe, all that good stuff, right? Get this out to your different social media accounts. What good is a message without an audience to hear it? If you would like to support me on Patreon, of course, you are able to do so. I, of course, aim on making this a career. And so obviously, in order to do that, I need to earn you guys' support. But of course, it doesn't need to be earned, right? I want to make sure that you guys actually believe that this show is worth it. Because if it's not worth it, then quite frankly, I don't deserve your money, right? Don't deserve to have this as a career or anything like that. So, all that. Also, you can follow me on numerous different social media websites if you choose. I have a different display name virtually every time, but my handle will always be TheCynicogue, exactly like you found it here, TheCynicogue. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter, your typicals. Instagram I do have, but I never use, I don't even use my personal Instagram, let alone my Cynicogue Instagram. But I do have that as well. Perhaps I'll start using it a little bit more so that I can get, a little bit more of a base there. But also the alternatives, Gab, Parler, Minds, you can find me on all of those as well. Reddit. You can also find me on, what do you call that? Library, Rumble, and BitChute for some alternative video streaming sites if you guys are wanting to check us out there. We don't live stream there, but I do try to post as many videos as I can there. It's kind of difficult sometimes. Rumble's easier, but BitChute sometimes just kind of randomly craps out on you for no reason. But nonetheless, I appreciate you guys being here. Before I go, I do have one question for you. In the face of Armageddon, will you compromise?